For decades, Carl Jung did not see empaths merely as sensitive or overly emotional people, as they are often labeled. To him, they were conduits of archetypal energy souls, so deep they are pierced by the chaotic, unconscious currents of the collective. They don't just sense the pain of others, they become that pain. This is not a gift. Jung warned that without awareness, empaths are at risk of complete identification with what they believe they are healing. They get pulled into nameless emotional whirlpools where the line between self and other dissolves. At that point, it is no longer empathy, it is possession by the collective unconscious. Have you ever wondered why an empath often feels drained after being around others? Why they carry sorrow that seems to belong to someone else? According to Jung, it is the repressed emotions of others, anger, fear, wounds that seek refuge in those with a spiritual crack. And the empath with a soul flung wide like an unlocked door becomes the perfect vessel. They do not do this out of kindness. They do not choose to save anyone. This absorption is the result of an ancient unconscious contract signed by a part of the soul they do not even know exists. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." For the empath, if they do not learn to distinguish true light from disguised possession, they will forever be used as an empty well. Therefore, the empath is not a healer. They are the ones called to heal themselves first, to break the cycle of absorption, sacrifice, exhaustion. Only when they see the shadow within their own empathy does their awakening truly begin. An empath is not a nice person. They are a channel for the unconscious. There is a truth few dare to face, one that shakes the very idea of healers often glorified in today's spiritual circles. An empath is not the universe's pure gift. They may be carrying a dangerous unconscious contract. Carl Jung once said, "The collective unconscious is not moral. It is both sacred and wild." And empaths, with their sensitivity to emotions, are often the first to drown in it if they are not aware. They are not simply emotionally intuitive. They are living vessels for the unlived shadows of their community, their family, and their ancestors. A scene from Therapy Empath in the Tears of a Bloodline. Imagine a therapy session. A young woman walks in tired eyes and a polite smile. Minutes into talking, tears stream down her face, but not because of any specific event. She says, "I don't know why I'm crying. I think I'm feeling for my mom, my grandma, my whole family line." And she's right. Empaths don't just feel, they channel the unspoken grief of generations. They cry not for themselves, but for forgotten souls and emotions tightly bound in time. Empathy versus enmeshment. Two different worlds. In depth psychology, there is a crucial distinction: empathy versus emotional enmeshment. An empathic person can understand others' emotions while maintaining personal boundaries. They see, feel, but do not dissolve. An enmeshed empath, however, especially one who is not awakened, absorbs emotions, memories, and psychic imprints as if they were their own. And this is not virtue, it's a collapse of spiritual boundaries. Jung's warning about chaotic energy. Jung warned the unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good. Not only bestial, but superhuman, spiritual, and divine. This means empaths who don't understand how the unconscious works risk becoming containers for both light and darkness without discernment. A suppressed memory, a repressed emotion, unspoken rage, all of it will bleed into the nearest open emotional conduit. And the empath with their wide open heart becomes the perfect antenna, when an empath becomes a container for others' darkness. Have you ever felt this? Sitting next to a sad friend and feeling mysteriously exhausted afterward? Waking up with a heavy emotional cloud, as if you lived someone else's life in your dreams? Feeling drawn to emotionally chaotic people even if it doesn't make sense? If yes, you may be unconsciously absorbing others' shadows. In Jungian terms, this is no longer personal emotion. It's archetypal flow, ancient energies beyond time passing through your body and psyche. These collective energies, ancestral, cultural, or psychological, are looking for a way out. And the empath is their ideal exit. Empaths are formed by survival, not enlightenment. One of today's biggest misconceptions is empaths are high souls sent to heal the world. But psychologically, most empaths were not born from light, but from early trauma. A child who learned to read their parents' mood to avoid getting hurt. A child who stayed silent to avoid triggering someone else's rage. a child who's self-regulated to avoid burdening a depressed mother. This is not love, it's survival. And as they grow, these children call it empathy. But in truth, it's an unhealed survival mechanism. And if they do not awaken, empaths will continue to absorb, carry, and live out other people's emotions. They will fall in love with emotionally wounded people, not out of love, but because the unconscious whispers heal them. They will cling to deeply broken partners, hoping that healing others will somehow heal themselves. But this is no longer love. It's a reenactment, a silent attempt to restore oneself through another. Jung called this enantiodromia, when one extreme turns into its opposite. The one who believes they are light becomes a refuge for darkness. The healer, if unaware of their own wound, becomes the one most deeply wounded. Now pause and ask yourself, am I truly helping or just replaying an old wound? Are these emotions truly mine, or are they moving through me? Do I believe I have the right to set boundaries? Can I love without dissolving? If you are an empath awakening, remember you are not alone. But to become a true healer, you must start by separating yourself from what is not yours. Don't be a channel for the unconscious. Be a conscious witness. In the deep waters of the unconscious, Jung warned, even goodness can possess you. In the vast depths of the unconscious, Carl Jung once warned, no act is truly innocent. Even seemingly noble traits, kindness, compassion, self-sacrifice, if not paired with awareness and inner discernment, can become invisible hands pulling us into a state of psychic possession. And empathy, deep emotional resonance, if not grounded in consciousness and spiritual structure, ceases to be a virtue. It becomes a wide-open gate, inviting unconscious currents and unintegrated shadows to flood in and occupy the soul. Not every feeling is yours. One of the common misperceptions among empaths is this: if I feel it, it must be mine. But Jung emphasized much of what we believe to be our emotions actually arises from the collective unconscious, the vast field of ancestral memories, cultural pain, historical trauma. An empath without discernment easily falls into this trap. They may feel sadness, but it could be the ancient grief of an unhealed mother. They may feel guilt, but are perhaps carrying the intergenerational burden of a father who endured war, poverty, or oppression. In such cases, emotion is no longer an inner message, but a form of infiltration. Like a psychic virus, it needs a host to survive, and the empath, with their sensitive, open soul but lacking inner boundaries, becomes the perfect dwelling place. From that point on, they no longer feel because of empathy. They feel because they've been possessed. A mirror that absorbs, not reflects. In a therapy session, I once met a man who used to be a priest. He carried a deep fear, I don't know who I am anymore. Each time he heard confessions, he didn't just listen. He absorbed the pain, shame, and shadow of others as if it seeped into his skin. He would return home depleted, haunted by dreams, filled with images and memories that were not his. This is a textbook case of an empath who has lost their inner boundaries. Jung called this phenomenon contamination, psychic cross-infection. When you can no longer distinguish what is yours from what belongs to others, you stop being a mirror and become a rag for other people's darkness. Possession can disguise itself as kindness. It sounds paradoxical, but one of the most common paths to unconscious possession is unconscious goodness. Be cautious when you find yourself thinking, I have to help this person. I can't leave them. I must carry their pain for them. These thoughts seem filled with love, but often beneath them lie deeper fears: fear of abandonment, fear of being useless, fear of losing your identity as the healer. Jung once said the unconscious is very smart. It knows how to dress selfish motives in angelic clothing. It can make you feel righteous, even divine, when in truth you're trying to save others just to avoid facing your own darkness. This is a dangerous form of possession, not from the outside, but from an archetype within you. The savior archetype, the dark side of empathy. Within you, there may be an ancient archetype quietly taking over the steering wheel of your soul, the martyr, the healer, or worse, the savior. When this archetype operates without your awareness, you may constantly attract people who need healing, feel guilty for setting boundaries, sacrifice your well-being to maintain the good person image. But deep down, you're no longer you. You've become a role of performance written by the collective unconscious. No discernment, no freedom. Jung wrote, we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Empathy without discernment stops being an act of love. It becomes a vehicle for the unconscious to use you while you still believe you're helping. That's the bitter paradox, thinking you are light while unknowingly feeding the dark. Pause and ask yourself, where is this feeling really coming from? Who or what is making me feel this way? Why do I feel like I must carry this pain? If you can't answer, it might not be yours. And if you let it operate within you, you've already lost your freedom. No boundaries, sure, no freedom. And without freedom, you are no longer yourself. You become a receiver of signals without a filter. The way out: discernment as a sacred practice. The solution is not to shut your heart or kill your feelings. The solution is to rebuild your inner structure, to learn to clearly discern what is mine and what is not. This path is not easy. It asks you to face your own shadow, identify the wounds that make you easily enmeshed, listen without becoming entangled, love without losing your soul's shape. Jung once compared the soul to a sacred bowl that holds holy water. Without the bowl's edges, the water spills and vanishes. Likewise, empathy is only sacred when held within strong boundaries. Without them, you're just a sinkhole for other people's shadows. Discernment isn't a wall, it's the shape of your soul. And only when your soul has shape can empathy become a true gift. Otherwise, it remains a burden masked as false light. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling empty, as if someone borrowed your soul without asking, if you've ever fallen deeply in love only to realize that love didn't come from conscious choice, but from an uncontrollable pull, if you've ever seen someone suffering and thought, I can't leave them, even while you were running on empty, then perhaps you've stood before one of the most sacred thresholds in spiritual life, the journey of transforming emotional enmeshment into sovereign inner structure. Empaths don't need more feelings, they need form. Imagine a bowl of water placed in the desert. It's the only source of hydration. All thirsty beings are drawn to it. They drink, they soak, some even drown in it. And the bowl, like an unaware empath, has no structure. It receives everything, no filters, no boundaries, no form. And the water, no matter how sacred, without a vessel spills, becomes polluted and disappears. That is the tragedy of the empath, so open, so sensitive, so understanding that they lose the shape of their soul. Carl Jung once said, where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling. But to reach that wisdom, the empath must learn one crucial thing: to consciously choose what is allowed to exist within their energetic field. Not every pain needs to be carried. Not every emotion that passes through needs to stay. That's not selfishness. That's sovereignty, spiritual self-ownership. Parse. Individuation, returning to the center of the self. Individuation, according to Jung, is the journey of becoming fully oneself, a unique whole and irreplaceable being. For empaths, this means reclaiming the fragments of their soul scattered into others and anchoring them back to their own center. You are no longer one pulled toward every wounded bird you meet, defining yourself by your usefulness, feeling responsible to heal every pain you witness. You begin to live from the self, the deepest core beyond the ego, a center where all archetypes may pass, but none can possess. Suwak. Signs you're transforming. Here are subtle signs that you as an empath are shifting from blind absorption to spiritual sovereignty. You begin to notice which emotions are yours and which are merely passing through. You can feel someone's pain without needing to fix it immediately. You no longer feel obligated to heal everyone. You choose when to engage and when to step back. You know how to listen without merging, to set limits without disconnecting. You can say no gently as an act of love toward yourself. This is the shift from possessed empath to sovereign empath, from carrying the collective burden to standing steady within the collective without dissolving. From emotion to alchemy. In ancient alchemy, fire was not meant to destroy, but to transform. Gold is not born from light, but from ash, from the coarsest materials of human nature. An empath who has touched the self no longer absorbs pain, they transmute it. They no longer cry for their mother. They no longer carry their ex-lover's grief. They no longer live out their ancestors' stories. They see the pain. They honor it. They can listen without rescuing. They return what isn't theirs with clarity, with compassion, without identification. At that point, empathy is no longer a reflex, but a living intelligence, a form of wisdom, not feeling more than others, but feeling with direction, structure, and awareness. Swardir, Washasegun, a question for you and for us. Throughout this message, you may have recognized parts of your own story. So ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you said no to someone in pain? Do you remember the last time you felt sadness but didn't take it on? Didn't carry it, just witnessed it. Have you ever held eye contact with someone breaking down and stayed rooted in your own soul? If the answer is yes, you are already on your path of transformation. If the answer is no, you're exactly where you need to begin. Dear Serenum, Hunkern, share your story. This is not an invitation to rescue one another. It's an invitation to witness each other. Comment below. What have you learned about boundaries? What have you lost in order to find yourself again? Are you still living like an unshaped bowl of water, or are you beginning to reshape the outline of your soul? We will read, we will not judge, we will see you as awakened witnesses. There is a profound paradox in the awakening journey of an empath. The more they heal themselves, the more they realize that many deep connections they once cherished no longer fit. This doesn't happen because they become cold, detached, or uncaring. It happens because the light of discernment begins to shine into the shadows, the places where love was confused with need, where attachment was mistaken for self-erasure. Empaths in the trap of being needed. When you live too long in the role of the feeler, you don't just become sensitive to others' emotions. You begin to define yourself through being needed in a relationship. You might find yourself always being the listener even when you're falling apart. Being the strong one even while chaos brews inside you. Never walking away even when you're being hurt again and again. And slowly, a question begins to form in your unconscious. If I stop caring others, will I still be loved? This is the core knot of emotional codependency, where love is no longer presence but performance, not connection but sacrifice. The empath is no longer loving, they are offering themselves as a form of existence. They become consumed by the need to keep others whole, even if it breaks them. Relationships, mirrors, or possessions. Carl Jung once said, every relationship is a form of projection. You never just love the other, you love the shadow of yourself reflected in them. Empaths, with their porous energetic structure, are easily drawn to souls who carry the same wounds, the same unhealed parts they've not yet named within themselves. They often find themselves attracted to people who are emotionally unstable because they too have inner chaos, emotionally distant because they haven't learned intimacy with themselves, emotionally manipulative because they haven't forgiven the part of themselves that once survived by controlling others. These relationships aren't random. They are recurring performances of psychological wounds where the empath reenacts the role of healer, but in truth is replaying an old script in a new costume. Many empaths feel addicted to toxic relationships not because they enjoy pain, but because the pattern is familiar. Like returning to a slow-burning house, it hurts, but it feels like home. When the empath awakens, how relationships change. When an empath begins the journey of individuation, becoming their own unique self, they stop being the emotional sponge of everyone around them. Subtle but powerful shifts begin to unfold. They stop attracting chaotic people. When there's inner order, chaos has no grip. They stop proving love through suffering. Love is no longer a test, it becomes a choice. They no longer feel guilty for setting boundaries. They understand a boundary is a sign of life, not rejection. And instead, Warren, they begin to ask, does this relationship nourish me? They choose silence over fixing. They realize that empathy is not a license to erase themselves. When discernment is anchored, old relationships built on need, trauma, bonding, or codependency begin to naturally dissolve. And from that sacred emptiness, new relationships rooted in honesty, freedom, and presence begin to emerge. Itacitum. Real love isn't healing, it's honest presence. Someone once told me I love him because I understand his pain. But from Jung's lens, that's not love, that's identification. You don't love who they are, you love your role in their healing. You love the feeling of being useful, important, redemptive. True love begins when you no longer need someone to be in pain in order to feel valuable. Mature love can say, I see your pain and I trust you are strong enough to face it. I won't abandon you, but I won't save you either. I choose to stay not out of duty, but from freedom. This is love with a spine, not dissolving, not devouring, not disappearing into each other. When an empath transcends the shadow of emotional possession, when they learn to establish and maintain spiritual boundaries, they open a new doorway, a sacred realm where the unconscious is no longer a haunting darkness, but a guiding light. This isn't merely a better phase, it is a spiritual breakthrough, an awakening into what Jung might call the path of the mystic wanderer. They become a vessel of inner sanctity, not through suffering, but through quiet witnessing and sincere presence. This is the peak of the soul's alchemical journey where emotion and inner light are transformed, where the empath shifts from absorber to guide. Gashurnon. 1. Listening to the inner call. At this stage, you begin to hear inner voices, not those of fear, anxiety, duty, or the need to help in order to feel worthy. Instead, a gentler voice says, it's time to stop using others to prove your value. It's time to heal to meet yourself in presence. This is not about being perfect. It is the soul's invitation asking you to step away from the role of healer and return to being you. Not to isolate, but to recenter you now. Move through emotion without getting swept away. You listen without becoming the character in someone else's drama. Two, the inner temple structured presence. As you go deeper inward, the shape of your soul shifts. It is no longer an open bowl that receives every emotion, nor is it a locked vault avoiding connection. It becomes a temple, a sacred space where emotions pass through, but do not stay, where everything is witnessed but nothing is absorbed blindly. Imagine an inner space stable enough to allow feelings to echo, yet free enough to let them go, both steady and sensitive. This is a sovereignty rooted in serenity, not detachment, but conscious, structured presence. In this state, your heart remains open, but you know when to close and when to open. You no longer avoid emotion, but you don't let it define you. It is a space of inner wisdom, not unconscious reaction. Timurum. 3. The archetype of the mystic wanderer. The empath is now called to embody a higher archetype, the mystic wanderer, like Hermes Thoth or Atlas, a guide between the unconscious and the conscious, between emotion and wisdom. No longer Quran, the wounded healer, now a translator of emotional and spiritual experience. You begin to see relationships not as attachments, but as classrooms. Emotions become messages, not problems to fix, but clues to understand yourself. You no longer need to do anything to cause transformation. Your presence alone is enough. Here, you're no longer under the spell of the unconscious. You steer the flow of energy, witnessing it and returning it with clarity. 4. From absorbing to guiding energy. Once you may have drifted like a sail in others' emotional winds. Now you are the captain, calm in your own sea, even amid storms. Each emotion that touches you, you don't pull it into yourself. You don't push it away without understanding. You guide it from unconsciousness into awareness by witnessing it freely. You no longer mirror, you illuminate. You no longer just endure, you transform. 5. The relationship with yourself, grounded yet flexible. Now that you've entered your sacred inner temple, you no longer say, I need to heal. You say, I will walk through this with steadiness. You don't fear solitude, you cherish both inner and outer space. You don't label emotions as bad, you welcome them, but don't let them accumulate. You understand emotions are visitors, not rulers. Your soul can love without merging. You are present without needing to rescue in order to feel whole. This is the mark of the awakened empath. They no longer need others to heal in order to feel healed. They don't need to do anything, their very being offers calm. Cool one. This isn't about being flawless, it's about having sovereignty over your emotions, showing up with structure, guiding emotion rather than being ruled by it, loving with backbone without dissolving. This is the essence of the mystic wanderer, an empath who not only lives but lives with soul, one who exists to witness, to embody, and to radiate inner light for themselves and for every soul they meet. And now, if you're still listening, it's likely not because this voice is louder than the noise of daily life, but because something inside you has just awakened. A door has quietly opened, not toward others, but toward yourself. Many empaths have long believed that feeling others' pain was their sacred duty, that love only feels real if you can melt into someone else's sorrow, control others' emotions like fire, and earn love by carrying suffering and understanding everything. But now you've awakened to a deeper truth. Real compassion doesn't require you to vanish into another's pain. Deep presence doesn't ask you to lose yourself. On the contrary, it's when you remain centered without judgment, without melting, without rescuing, that true healing can begin. Carl Jung once spoke of individuation as returning from the world of others to meet yourself once and forever. Empaths too must return. You may have once lived as if your soul were sacred ground meant to hold the world's pain, But now you've seen that sacred ground needs boundaries. It needs light. Not a loud, showy brilliance, but a warm, steady glow that comes from within. You're no longer an absorber, you've become a guide. No longer a mirror of shattered wounds, you are the mirror of wholeness unbreakable. You are the quiet lantern, not as bright as the sun, but gently lighting a corner of the world's soul. Atsiribononom, carrying the light through every moment. If you've ever wondered how to hold this light daily amidst life's chaos in emotional waves, here are gentle yet powerful reminders. When someone's emotions rise within you, pause and ask, does this feeling truly belong to me, or is it a reflection? When you feel the urge to rescue someone, ask, am I truly helping them, or trying to soothe my own fear of being unneeded? When exhaustion sets in from being too kind, remember true compassion never costs you your soul. Marwer desiyermin, the fear, will I still be loved? You may wonder, if I stop being the healer all the time, if I stop dissolving into others, will I still be loved, remembered? Yes. When you live honestly as yourself, not only are you loved, you are respected. Because true presence offers a depth no words can capture. You don't need to be divine or radiant with perfection. You only need to be you, whole, honest, present. Not swallowing others' darkness, but still seeing them with unjudging eyes. If this journey has stirred something in you, leave a small sign below. A thought, a question, a moment that made you pause and reflect. Not for me, but for you to remind yourself that you no longer have to walk alone. Simakun. And if this path feels worth continuing, consider hitting subscribe. Not because I need another number, but because maybe one day in a moment of weariness, a new video appears like a whisper from the unconscious. Come home. You don't need to heal the whole world. You just need to keep that quiet, steady light burning inside you.